to show you how to bake a cake. For this cake, we're going to preheat our oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is approximately 180 degrees Celsius. And we'll let that warm up. Alright, so what we first need to do is take our pan, and we're going to butter it. This is so that the cake won't stick to the pan once it's finished baking. You don't need too much butter. As you can see, a little bit goes a long way. You want to make sure that you do the sides. This is a very simple butter brush. It's really great for helping you to butter the pan. You can also take the paper off of your butter and use that and smear it into the pan as well. So this will stop the cake from sticking to the pan, but if we left it with just the butter, then the cake would also get very greasy. So after we're finished this, we're almost done here, make sure that all the area is covered with butter. And I also like to just smooth the top area in case the cake comes over a little bit. That way it won't stick to there either. So now, I'll put the butter aside, and then what I have is just about 2 tablespoons of flour. We're just going to sprinkle that in, and then what we're going to do is we're going to pat it so that the flour shifts around. We're just going to get it on all the sides. There. You can do this over a bowl if you like, so that you can catch the flour a bit better. I'm just letting it fall on the table here, and we'll just clean it up afterwards. Alright. Ta-da! One nicely floured, buttered and floured cake pan ready to use. So now I'm going to just clear off my cake space here. So there is our pan that we're going to cook our cake in. Buttered and floured. The butter prevents the cake from sticking to the pan, and the flour prevents the butter from making the cake too greasy. So we'll just set that aside. And now we're going to make the cake batter. You're going to need 2 bowls. And we're going to use 6 eggs. And we need a cup of sugar, a cup of flour. You're going to need 1 teaspoon of lemon extract and 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. You'll need 1 teaspoon of baking powder and 1 teaspoon of salt. Alright, so now what we do first, I like to mix the flour, the dry ingredients first. So you take your cup of flour and you add your teaspoon of baking powder and your teaspoon of salt. And then there's a neat little technique for stirring it. If you just twist the spoon around, then it will mix it all nicely through there for you. You always want to mix your dry and your wet ingredients separately before putting them together. There we go, that is mixed enough. So we'll set that aside and we'll use it in a little while before we put these away. And we also need a spatula. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to mix the eggs separately. We're going to separate the eggs. So you take the egg and you crack it over the large bowl, and then you're going to separate the eggs. So you're going to let the egg white go off, hold on to the egg yolk, and separate the egg, and then put the egg yolk in here. It's okay for the egg white to go in with the egg yolk. It is not okay for the egg yolk to go in with the egg white. There you have those. The reason is because we're going to actually be fluffing up the egg white, and egg yolk stops your egg white from fluffing up. It has grease in it, fat in it, that doesn't fluff. Whenever you're baking a cake, you always make sure that you pull your hair away from your face so that none of your hairs will fall into the food, and that you've washed your hands thoroughly with a good soap to make sure you're not passing on any bacteria. Everything you want to have nice and clean and hygienic. Because as you can see, my fingers do touch the egg, so you want to make sure that it is clean. There are special egg separator cups that you can get where you put the egg in it and all the egg white overflows and the egg yolk stays behind. But I find this just as easy, and it saves you having to buy an extra tool. Here's our last egg. There we go. All right, I'll just put this aside and wash my hands again. All right, so now we have our egg white and our egg yolks. So the first thing I like to do is I like to put the sugar already into the egg yolks. So 1 cup of sugar and 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. I like to use lots of flavor in my cakes. You can use less if you like. And 1 teaspoon of lemon extract. And I'll just let that sit in there while I'm fluffing up my egg whites. So there you've got the yolk, the sugar, the vanilla, and the lemon extract. So I'm just going to put that aside, and I'll move over this one, and we're going to fluff up our egg whites. All right, here we go. You can tell when your egg white is ready simply by tilting the bowl, and if it follows you like that, it's not ready yet. You want it to be stiff. All right, let's have a look. So there is our egg white, and as you can see, it's not floating, and even you can turn it upside down. That's how you know it's done. And you want to make sure you do that carefully, or else it's going to fall on the table. All right, so that is finished. So we're going to set that aside. We're going to take back our egg yolk mixture, and we're just going to mix this till it's really nice and creamy and frothy. Really like to make it super fluffy, so we have an extra fluffy cake. This is going to be a sponge cake. And the trick to coming out and not spraying it everywhere is just as you're pulling it out to slow down the levels. Okay, so we'll set that aside. And here we go. Look how nice and creamy and frothy that is. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put this mixture into our egg white mixture. So pour that in using our spatula. A wooden spoon will work also. I like the spatula because in a moment you'll see how we're going to fold it all together and it just keeps everything nice and light and frothy. I have a very old Tupperware spatula here, and but you can use any kind of spatula. The silicone ones nowadays are really good. All right, try to scrape out as much as you can. Waste not, want not, right? Put that aside. So now we have our mixture, and we're going to just fold it gently. So we're not going to be stirring roughly, because that would get rid of all the beautiful bubbles we've had. Very gently folding it over. And we don't need to fold too much, just enough to get a base going. There. Now we're going to add our flour mixture that we made. And we're just going to simply sprinkle a little bit at a time and fold that in. There. So again, we're folding it in. As the egg comes up, it will simply absorb the flour until we get a really nice batter. You want to make sure all the flour is absorbed, so you don't end up with cake with lumps of flour in it. Sprinkle in the rest of the flour. Again, we just want to do it in stages so that we keep everything nice and light and fluffy. So this is our last bit of flour going in. Just going under, coming out, pulling up, letting the flour stick to the egg mixture. And we're creating our cake batter. And our oven is nice and warm now, so it'll be ready for us to put our cake into. Now, I was saying teaspoons and cups. I know many of you are metric, and literally, I don't actually use a measuring system. I just grab a teaspoon that I would use to stir my tea with. I grab a tablespoon that I would use to drink my soup with, and I use a cup that I would use, like you saw, just simply to drink out of. This is a very versatile recipe. It's very flexible. If you want a fluffier one, you add more egg. If you want it a more dense one, just add more flour. It's very versatile. You can add or take away sugar to taste, and the same with the vanilla and the lemon. All right, so we have a nice fluffy batter mixture here. We're going to put that into our cake pan. So here we have our cake pan. You can use any kind of a pan. I've used cereal bowls, as long as they're ceramic or metal or glass. You don't want to put any plastic in the oven. But ceramic, metal, and glass are fine. Always make sure they're clean, of course. Scrape out as much as you can. I'm going to take advantage of it. I like using the side of the bowl to help me remove the batter from my spatula. Right. Set that aside. And just spread out the cake mixture into the corners. When you're filling up a cake pan, you want your cake pan to be halfway full with the batter. Then you know it's not going to overflow, and it should fill up the size of your cake pan nicely. If you find that your oven is not cooking the centers of your cakes very well, you can always add an icing rose. It looks like a metal nail with a flat top. You turn it upside down and place it in there, and it'll distribute the heat evenly. All right, so I've got this all nice and even. There we go. And I'm just going to wash my fingers, and then we'll pop it in the oven. All right, so let's put our cake in our oven. Make sure you use your oven mitts so you don't burn yourself. And you want to have your oven rack in the center, and you want to place your cake in the center of the center rack so that your cake will get even heat everywhere. Put this, and we're going to let that cook for 20 minutes. And then we're going to come back and have a look and see if it's ready. All right, now let's go and clean our bowls so we can make some icing while we're waiting. All right, so our cake has just reached its 20 minutes. We're going to take a toothpick, a wooden toothpick, and just see if it's ready. So we use our oven gloves again. Open up the oven. It's looking really good. And we're going to just, with our toothpick, prick into the center and pull it out. And it came out nice and clean. Try again in another area. Came out nice and clean. And here. Perfect. So this one was ready. Look at that. In about 25 minutes. It took me a little bit just to get it ready. So we'll put that away. We'll let that cool down. And we'll turn off our oven. All right, now a tip that I've learned, because we sometimes have problems with flies in our houses. I don't have any problem with that right now. But this is a great way to keep your cake cooling. Just put a nice small towel on top of your cake, and it can cool at its own pace, and it won't dry out, and no bugs will get to it. So that's how I cool my cakes. And you want the cake to cool completely before we ice it, or else your icing will just simply melt on it. And it'll be easier to get out of the cake pan if you just let it cool completely. So I'll show you what it looks like once